Hello, it's Father Norm Douglas again. Many of you have listened to previous videos, and thank you for being able to come back again and let other people know. I've gotten many good responses from these little, I don't know if they're fireside chats. Whoever even knows what that means. If you're my age, you at least were aware. You weren't alive that when President Roosevelt had those chats. But we all probably need to have a chat now and then about topics that are important in our lives. And I hope anything I share will speak to your heart and maybe get you thinking about your own life. I often talk about my life experience, but there was a psychologist, Carl Rogers, that said once, that which is most deeply personal is most universal. So hopefully I share some things from my heart, from my life, and that resonates or that gets you to think about something you haven't thought about for a while. Hopefully in a good and uplifting way. We have so many circumstances today where we get put down, or the news is negative, or we need something to inspire us, to encourage us, to remind us of all that is sacred and good in our lives. Today, I'd like to talk about friendship. Think about it. How many friends do you have? They always say, even if you have one or two good friends, that's great. I know I've talked to a lot of young people who will say, "Oh, I have 2,000 or 3,000 friends on Facebook." I said, "That's amazing. How many of them do you know?" "Well, maybe 30 or 40. How many of those 30 or 40 do you connect with regularly, or have you talked and shared some of your life?" "Well, maybe four or five." And even some have said, not just talking to young people about Facebook, when I said, have you ever had a really good friend, or especially now, a good friend you can share your heart with? You can share the things you're excited about, and you can share some of the hurts and losses and vulnerability. It's part of who you are that maybe you don't share with everybody else. And know that this friend will be encouraging and will be a good listener, and will always keep you in mind and heart. Friends are a sacred gift. Probably don't always think about that, have you? Friends as a sacred gift. Today, a lot of people report being lonely. You read about that all the time, especially in the pandemic. A number of older people will say, especially if they've lost friends and they're in their 80s or 90s now, that it's difficult, that they are lonely. Sometimes, as a priest, I get an opportunity to visit people like that in our parish, and I know it's uplifting for them. It's uplifting for me, hearing their stories and being able to have a good conversation with folks who've got a lot of wisdom and who aren't in a hurry to get to the next thing. The reality is, even today, many young people report feeling lonely. Sometimes even those who are very connected with social media. That can be a great way to reach people. It could also be, if it becomes a substitute for those personal conversations. Again, people may say, "Yep, I do social media a lot. However, I'm still lonely." In fact, when we look at that issue, and I'm coming obviously as a priest from a place of faith, especially of Christian faith, open to all people. But Jesus himself, at the Last Supper, as he was knowing, the disciples didn't know that he was going to be led off and betrayed and then crucified. At that Last Supper meal, he shared a number of things with them. But one of the things he said to them very poignantly, "I call you friends. You're not my servants. And I'm your master, and that's our relationship. No, we're friends. I care about you more than just as your local rabbi, and I need your friendship." In fact, we don't often think about that, but when Jesus first called his apostles, certainly he wanted them to share his mission, to go out to others, but also from the beginning of his ministry, even Jesus needed and valued friends. At times, his friends disappointed him, and he was hurt by that. Even when they betrayed him and denied him at the Last Supper, he was hurt. In fact, we know that on the cross, he said, "My God, why have you abandoned me?" And part of that feeling of abandonment, obviously from God, was also because feeling abandoned by those human beings he had reached out and supported. Where were all those friends that he made over those 3 years when they got close? They weren't there except for one, John. And then the people he reached out to, and we know when he healed and he taught and he fed the 5,000, all of that, they weren't there. And Jesus was fully human and must have had a sense of loss. And he maybe even wondered, some theologians have mentioned this, maybe even wondered for a moment, did my life make a difference? What's the connection there? Obviously, he did feel abandoned, but in the end, he said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Certainly, his father, his heavenly father, his spiritual father, was his best friend. And often our best friends are family, and to treasure them and appreciate them. But it's also good to have a wider circle of friends. I know for me as a Catholic priest, also, I think I've told you that my mom raised me. I was an only child. She was a single parent, no brothers and sisters. So through life from the early days, having friends became very important and life-giving. Now, I can go all the way back to kindergarten and how excited I was because at those days there was no preschool, and so when I was home, it was just me, and I learned to be alone and I learned to be able to do a lot of things. But I remember when my mom sent me off to kindergarten, she wondered if that would be an issue for me because I wasn't used to being around a lot of people my age. She was surprised, kind of, when I came back home from that first day and said, Mom, I love it. Oh, I've already made a bunch of friends. I was excited. Part of it probably being an extrovert, but also every one of us, right from kindergarten, to make friends. And you know what? Some of those friends going back to kindergarten, I still see periodically today. We have a circle of friends from high school, and we graduated 55 years ago from high school that still connect as good friends. And we can tease each other. We can talk as though we're right back 55 or 60 or 70 years ago. And it's just a great feeling. And there's a lot of joy. And also, when people are going through a lot, there's a sense here's the people who've known me for years, and they still care about me, and we connect in some way. Also, through the years, in every parish I've been in, I've made friends. I remember before I was ordained, the spiritual director at that time said, when you go to these different parishes, don't get close to anybody. Because you're the priest, you're separate, and also if you get close to some families, others might be envious. You might have those issues, and that was the thinking back then. I think today, and I can tell you in all these 5 different parishes, I've made good friends, and other people haven't been envious. And it's not I spent all my time with them or just paid attention to them. No, but friends who have been life giving. Again, I have friends going back to my first parish 46 years ago, St. Barnabas in Northfield, and friends here at St. Vincent. I care about all in the community, but some people you get closer to for a number of reasons, and there's a joy in that. And certainly a witness to encourage other people, whatever their age, to make friends. As we look at this, again, I think that's one of the ways we can get to better understand Jesus through our human friendships with others. We see what Jesus was talking about and come to really believe Jesus is saying, hey, through your friends, know my friendship, know how I want to relate to you and how we can connect. And that's a beautiful thought that Jesus not only wants us to see him as Lord and Savior and God's Son, which is all true, but also as a friend we can talk to, believe he hears us, relate everything to him in prayer spontaneously, just like you're talking to a good friend, because you are. As we look at this whole notion of friendship, gosh, a little over 30 years ago, about 12 of us that were similar age then, probably around 40, we started connecting on an every other week basis on a Sunday night. And we would meet. We were all a group of guys, and we would meet and talk about what's going on in our life. especially at that kind of middle age point and where the future was going to be. We met for a number of years, and then we hadn't met, and we just a couple of years ago, 8 of us came together again and are meeting regularly. In fact, we were going to one another's homes, sharing a meal, sharing heart-to-heart conversations. And of course, then, like all of us, the pandemic happened. Well, what we did, and many of you have found that out too, we got to Zoom. Thankfully, we have social media and technology like that today where we could connect and see one another and talk and pray together. That's a good thing. Hopefully, if many of you have been lonely or isolated, whether it's connecting with a few people or family members on Zoom or some other platform like that, whether it's simply calling people. I think some people have told me, gee, that they were just used to texting their friends, which was good. But when this came, they started to see when they first started texting each other, hey, wait a second, we have time, we can call each other, even with the face phone or whatever they call that thing, seeing each other, and thinking about it, that some of us had just gone back to relying on text, which was good, but missing that added element of those conversations we can have on a deeper heart-to-heart level. I just want to mention one friend. I've had many, and reason I'm talking about him, this coming week will be 2 years since he died, and what a good guy. His name is Manny. And as I talk a little bit about Manny, all of us can think about friends that we've had or people that see us as a good friend that lift them up. But Manny, just very briefly, got to know him back 31 years ago. And he wouldn't mind my sharing this. He shared it with others. At the time, he had been alcohol and drug addicted and had a lot of issues. And he ended up spending some time in a correction institute because of an issue. But when he got out of there, this was striking to me. He was 39 years old, and certainly, had talked to God a lot, and from the time he was 16 had these addictions and was hoping he'd get over them, but hadn't. But this time he said it was different, that he really had an experience of God when he was in the Correction Institute, God showing his love, God being a friend. And he opened up and let God be his friend, even though he probably thought he didn't deserve it. But he had an experience where God reached out, broke through all of that stuff, his barriers, thinking, I don't deserve you, God, and I'm a mess, and was open enough to the Lord to let the Lord touch his life. And I can tell you from that time on, he stopped drinking, he stopped drugging, and his life turned around. Eventually, he became a drug and alcohol counselor himself. But through the years, we've been very good friends. And Manny was always very supportive. We worked out together because both of us were such that it was easier that we'd go together and partner. So we'd all show up at the gym for each other's sake and work out together. And it made working out a joy. And we were involved and connected in many other ways through the years. And the last year or so of his life, he was dealing with an illness with cancer, and slowly went start to go downhill. But he always kept a positive attitude, and he could have always been in a self-pity and resentment because he was young and going through this. But no, he was very positive, very open, very grateful for God in his life and for friends, and he was such a good friend. For a few weeks, he ended up in hospice, knowing the last several weeks of his life, hey, it's moving in the step. I need to be open and step by step, not take all kind of medication, which wasn't helping at that point, and just be open and trusting that those several weeks would be an ultimate journey to God through the reality of death, his best friend. We talked a lot about that even before he went to hospice. But there again, many people talked about Manny who worked there and said, what a great guy, how positive, how inspirational. He was concerned about them even while he was dying. There's much more I could say about Manny, but just want to mention that. And I miss him, as I said 2 years ago. Still have a sense of that heaven and earth connection of a friend there rooting for me, and someday I'll see again. So today, think about friendship. Think about friendship with Jesus. Think about some of those friends you've had over the years and give thanks. Think about where maybe now you're called to reach out and be a friend to somebody else. Often I've heard the quote to have a friend, be a friend. And a lot of people out there need befriended. Another step, again, just sharing some of this so you think about your own life. God bless you, and may you be blessed, especially with good friends. And may your friends be blessed with a good friend like you.